Thank you for those of you that have joined us for our community conversation today. Just as a reminder, we will be starting in about 3 minutes at 4 p.m. Well, welcome everyone to our Wednesday community conversation. So, I don't know, has anybody ever heard the one about a superintendent who's getting ready to present to a community about remote learning and the technology to run that remote learning doesn't work? Well, I apologize for the delay yesterday, the technical difficulties, but our tech team does a phenomenal job. They worked all yesterday, they tested it. We've used the same platform over and over. And as luck would have it, one of our switches and ports started acting up right at the same time. But we've got that fixed, and we're excited to be back live with you today, sharing our first community conversation about blended learning, online learning, schedule, in-person learning, and everything for our schedule for and planning for the upcoming school year. So what we want to do today is give you an overview, a big picture view of the work that we're doing. And we've got some decisions that we want to share with you. It's important to me as superintendent and our board and our district that we have transparent communication. What that means is we're going to tell you decisions when we know them, and we're going to share them in parts as we make those decisions and then put it together in a holistic plan at the end. But we also need to be understanding in this transparency that things may change, rules may change, and may need to pivot. But we're going to share with you where we're at right now and the decisions we've made for blended learning, what we're doing with our academic calendar, and also some details about our completely online option that parents and families will have next year, our Strongsville online learning option. Talk a little bit about in-person, in-building instruction, and then share with you some of the feedback and themes we got from the survey we sent out earlier this week. So as I've done in the past, I'll share my screen with you, talk from some slides. We'll put this out to parents as well, so you don't need to take pictures or write things down that are on the slides. We'll send those out to you. So what we want to start with is this graphic that is on the screen right now. This is our focus. This is what we're planning for. Every other school year prior to this, we know very well how to run in-person, in-building education without restrictions. But this year we have to have at least 3, and we're planning for 4 options. That it's kind of like that plan we put on the shelf. We have the plan ready, and if things change in terms of the prevalence of COVID in our area, in our county, in our state, we're able to implement each of these four plans or three plans and plus the online learning option for families without much delay. So as you can see here, we are, excuse me, we are planning for in-person and in-building learning with restrictions based on the health and safety requirements that are still to be finalized. We are also planning for remote learning. What if there's another spike and we have to shut down, the state shuts us down like we did last year, and we need to be completely remote learning 2.0. We're planning for that as well. And what happens if we need to put those two together? We can do some in-person learning. We can do some remote learning. And that's what blended learning is. And we're going to talk about that. That's a big part of our focus today. And all of this is wrapped around, if you could see the circle, continuous stakeholder input and feedback. As I shared with you via email, we have a variety of work groups going on across the district, from preschool to high school to district. And those work group members all have 10 friends that they're reaching out to. So that means our scope of influence and feedback is almost at 3,000 people. So we're really happy with the way the structure is working, the decisions we're making that are going to meet as many needs as we possibly can. We can't meet all needs, but as many as we possibly can with our kids and our community. Now, as you see in the two little boxes at the bottom, the work group efforts we talked about, but these health and safety requirements. If you've been paying attention to the governor, he shared about last week that we have these 11 draft health and safety requirements. A lot of them are general, wash your hands thoroughly, cough or sneeze in your elbow, things of that nature, disinfect and sanitize high touch surfaces. But there's two in there that I know have various opinions as to whether we should have them or not. One of them is facial coverings. Right now, the rules say that all students on school property at all times should wear facial coverings. And the other one is social distancing, stating that in schools, on buses, we need to have social distancing of at least 6 feet. So the governor said last week, within the next 10 days, we will share the finalized health and safety requirements moving forward. He was supposed to do it last week. He was supposed to do it Tuesday. Nothing has been shared as of yet. Excuse me, battling with some allergies here. But we're hopeful by the end of the week. If not, it's got to be done by June 30th, that he will share these health and safety finalized requirements. And that really is going to change. It's not going to change our planning, but it's going to change which of the plans we're going to be able to implement to start the school year. And so one of the things that we're hearing from the state level is that these requirements may be shifted to more guidance, and those decisions would be made locally with our Board of Health, and that they're also looking to determine guidance based on a variety of levels. So if you think of snow ban levels of, a level 1 snow emergency, level 2, that they would set these different levels and have guidance attached to those levels, and that way they could set guidance per county versus an entire state. So more to come on that. But those health safety guidelines or requirements, whatever they come to be finalized as, are not going to throw everything out that we've done. We still need these plans, but it's going to determine how we start and then how we move throughout the rest of the school year. So what I want to talk about first is blended learning. So if you remember from that graph, blended learning is saying it's a combination that for each week, X number of days will be remote and online learning at home. So if you think of what we did from March to May, 5 days a week, it wouldn't be 5 days a week, but we do remote learning, and we'll get to what that's going to be or what we're working on for that. But X number of days will be at home, and X number of days of in-person learning will be at school each week. So we're just taking those two ideas and combining them together. Now, why would we need to implement blended learning? And this is the reason. It's social distancing. If you take a look at our school district, we've measured every classroom space, every classroom area in the district. And as I've said here on the slide, most of our classrooms average between 700 to 800 square feet. And now, listen, they're not all perfect squares, especially at the middle school. We've got angled walls. We have furniture in there. But if you just do the math, if every student needs 6 square feet of social distancing, or 6 feet social distancing, that means that each student needs 36 square feet in the classroom. So this means if we take everything out of the classroom but student desks and a teacher desk, and you do the math of 36 or 700 divided by 36 square feet or 800 divided by 36, on average, we can fit 15 to 20 students based on 36 square feet per student and 6 feet social distancing. Most of our class sizes are over 20 students. At the elementary level, K to 3, we have a class guidance cap of 25. And in other grade levels, it ranges from that 25 on up to 30. And so we cannot say all kids are going to come back every day because we don't have the room to fit them. So that's what forces us in other districts. I've read plans across Ohio and in California, and this is, it's a variation of a theme that if we can't have all kids together every day, 5 days a week in the room, that we need to create this blended structure where we create cohorts of students where we can reduce the numbers and fit 15 students in a class versus 30 students that may need to attend otherwise. The other thing that's interesting to note is that if, based on this math, if the requirements for social distancing were reduced just to 5 feet, so if every student instead of needed 6 feet needed 5 feet, that gets us down to 25 square feet, and we would basically be able to bring back every student every day to do in-person and in-building instruction with restrictions for common spaces, but we would be able to bring everybody in. So these safety and health requirements are going to be critical for us because just 1 foot per student makes a world of difference. But that's why we have to have this blended learning plan. If 6 feet is the guidance we get and have to stick with, then we have to have this model. So let's talk a little bit more about what blended learning looks like. But before we do that, I want to talk, I have kind of these slides in here that are little side notes, little off to the side conversations, just about common feedback or questions we've gotten from our community. So one of the things we've gotten was like, all right, Cameron, we get that, we need to socially distance 6 feet and it's not, our kids can't fit in our classrooms we have, but what about getting other space? What about renting office space? Or, hey, Sears closed, what about going into Sears? Or what about purchasing trailers? So we've done some research on that. The board asked us to do some research on the office space and the trailers, and we did that, and we did a whole bunch of scenario planning. So if we took a look at just our elementary age students, and we said, what would it take to rent office space? We worked with our city officials to get an average square footage cost for office space. What would it cost us to rent office space for all of our elementary school students to attend school? What would it cost us in additional staffing? What would it cost us in retrofitting the space, furniture, technology, et cetera? And just for 6 months, it would cost the district $1.3 million. As a starting estimate, that's kind of the baseline of $1.3 million. That doesn't take into consideration that we would have to retrofit spaces. We would have to look at, would there be companies out there that want thousands of kids and school buses coming onto their property? Would they want us to retrofit for a short-term lease? So as we looked at that option, as we looked at the practicality of renting large spaces, retrofitting them, putting hundreds of kids into mass spaces instead of classrooms, we've made the determination that financially it's not prudent to use $1.3 million of our taxpayer money for a 6-month period of time, and nor is it educationally sound. And then lastly, talking to our city officials about what's the practicality of a company accepting a school district for a short-term lease with the needs we have. And the answer was, it's not impossible, but it's unlikely that you're going to have a tenant that's going to want to go through all that for a short-term lease, even for a school district. So we've done the scenario. We have that information if we need it, but it's not something we're pursuing further at this time. The other thing that comes up is, some school districts that run out of space, they have trailers. Well, what about renting trailers? Well, there's not a lot of availability stock in place right now. Secondly, the square footage you get from these trailers is not such that we can fit more kids. The rental price for trailers is large, and that doesn't include hookup for gas, electric, sewers, waters, et cetera, if we wanted to do that instead of having kids to move into the building for some of the bathroom needs. So again, we've done that exercise. We've looked thoughtfully at that, and that's something that we are not pursuing any further. So I just wanted to have that side note on some of the other options we've explored to get kids back 5 days a week, all kids every day. So let's go back to blended learning and the model that the decision that we've made and the model that we will be implementing if we have that 6 feet social distancing and if we have to use our blended learning model plan. So as we talked about, we are going to divide students into 2 cohorts. That's the only way to meet the social distancing requirements. We're still working through those details. That's something that's on the work group's list right now, but we're going to start off with predominantly looking at trying to group students by their last name. That way families can have their children on the same schedule. So what this means is we divide kids into two cohorts, and we're implementing what we're calling an alternating days schedule. That means that kids will go to school in person every other day and stay home every other day. So cohort A, as you can see, will attend school in person on Monday and Wednesday, and they'll take part in remote learning at home on Tuesday and Thursday. Cohort B is exactly the opposite. They will take part in in-person school Tuesday and Thursday and remote learning at home Monday and Wednesday. So that's how it would work. Our teachers would be working 5 days a week. They would be with different kids live for those 4 days. They'd be providing remote learning. We'll talk about that in a second. But you may be thinking, well, what about Friday? You haven't mentioned Friday. Well, that's something we're still finalizing the plans for in terms of how we will use that Friday. And as it says on the slides, we're determining whether that will be a complete remote learning day for students, that all students will be off on that Friday, whether there'll be some in-person instruction, ideas of maybe cohort A will come one Friday, cohort B will come another Friday, maybe morning, afternoon. Maybe, we bring in specific groups of students for enrichment or help or study tables, extra guidance. We're still working out those details, or a combination. What I mean is our plans are not stagnant where whatever we decide today, we're going to live like that forever. What I mean is we may start out more restrictive, and we may say, hey, for the first few weeks of the school year, we're going to have no students in the building on Fridays just till we get the hang of this and get a schedule going, get comfortable with remote learning and this blended learning. But you know what? In maybe after the first few weeks, we move to another phase, and we're able to bring students back on Friday. So those are some of the things that we're discussing. And I know a question that always comes up is, if my students in cohort A, we've got Mondays that are off during the school year. How is that going to work? Will they have less days than other kids? We will work on a schedule where all students will get as close to as equal number of days of in-person learning as both cohorts. So we're working on that as well. So again, this little side note, what's the rationale for selecting an alternating day model? The other common, again, I've read a lot of these plans, I'm sure you have. The governor stated, well, maybe one group will go Monday, Tuesday, we'll have Wednesday off, then another group will go Thursday, Friday. So what about consecutive days, alternating days? Why did we select this alternating day plan? Well, one of the big reasons for a consecutive day plan and having these cohorts separated by this day in the middle is that you need that day for deep cleaning. Now, the idea being that, we'd have one group of students that stuck together, have a day off, deep clean, and then we'd have another group of students. But we've looked and analyzed our custodial staffing and our disinfecting procedures, and we're able to disinfect high-touch surfaces, classroom surfaces on a nightly basis. So we don't need that day in the middle of the week, and we don't need separate groups of students in these cohorts. So that allows us for additional options. And then really where we go to is what is in the educational best interest of our kids. And as you take a look at it in all of our work groups, and I think what's powerful is we have work groups that are at the preschool level, elementary, middle school, and high school. And the preschool, elementary, and middle school all recommended, in all different groups, different focus group feedback, all recommended the same alternating day schedule. The high school originally recommended a consecutive day schedule, but after further reflection, they thought that this would be beneficial for them as well. Because what it does, as you can see in the second bullet point, is it eliminates the concern about a cohort of students not being in school for 5 days. So if you did that consecutive day model, Monday, Tuesday, students would be home Wednesday through Sunday, and we wouldn't have that contact where I could teach a live in-person lesson, help support and facilitate more on the out day, the remote learning day on Tuesday, and then I get you back on Wednesday. I get you back to intervene, to enrich, to support, to give you feedback, as it says, to continue that learning. And I don't lose you all at once for the rest of the week. And I think what's also important, we're talking academics, but part of that academics is the social and emotional and educational supports and needs that our students have. One of the things that's been difficult for our kids is not having that social interaction, the relationships. And the survey results you sent back is that you want your kids to have that. Well, if I can say, I can have that and get the most out of the time we have available, and kids can have that social interaction and be in school multiple times separated throughout the week rather than 2 days and they're gone, we think that's in the best interest of our kids. And so that's why we picked the alternating model. So again, that's kind of how it's going to work for the in-building, in-person instruction. Alternating days, 2 days in person, 3 days remote learning. As we have it right now, Fridays, we're going to talk about what that's going to be. But the other part of that is remote learning. So what are my kids going to do when they're home? One of the things we also heard loud and clear from you is that we need to enhance remote learning. And that's why on the graph it says remote learning 2.0. So I don't have anything to share at this community conversation. This will be at a future one. But as we make some of these beginning decisions that open to other decisions, this is where the focus of our work groups are at right now is what is remote learning going to look like as a component of blended learning when my kids go, 2 or 3 days a week in person? What are they going to be doing at home for those other days? I can tell you right now, live instruction is going to be increased. Consistent platforms are going to be there for parents, but they're working through the details right now. And they're also working on that one piece of the pie right there, that's complete remote learning 2.0. What happens if the state comes in, there's another spike and they shut us down? Like, a lot of colleges, they're saying, we're going to go through Thanksgiving and then we're going to shut down from Thanksgiving to the first of the year. What if that happens in Ohio? Well, we're working on that plan right now to say, here's what remote learning 2.0 is going to look like 5 days a week. So nothing to share. That will be at a future community conversation, but please know that's on the radar. And that really, we had a meeting earlier today, and that's the focus of our groups, preschool on up to the high school. So with that, that concludes our blended learning section. So what I want to do now is move on to the next topic, which is our academic calendar. So one of the things that we've been talking about is, do we need to make any adjustments to our academic calendar? And so there's one recommendation that's been put out there, just as a piece of information. It is a proposal. The Board of Education approves the calendar. So it's not official until the Board of Education approves it. But what the committees have proposed is that we move the start date for students. The original start date for most of our kids was Tuesday, August 18th. And that we move that to that we would start sometime we would start August 24th, Monday, August 24th would be the latest that we would start. The rest of the calendar would remain unchanged. So, we got a lot of feedback about what about winter break, spring break, other breaks, end of the school year. Nothing else would change for the calendar. So we are looking at, as you plan, and until a final decision is made, what you need to take into consideration as a family is that the latest your children will start is August 24th. The earliest that they'll start is August 18th. And we're looking, and I'll share in a minute what we're focused on for making that decision. So the rationale, what's the rationale for a delay to the start of the school year? One of the things in schools is our teachers, our support staff, our administrators. There's very few of us that work year round. Some administrative staff do, some custodial staff, some tech staff do, but the majority of our staff by this time is on summer break. So we need, and they're working hard at home and planning, but we need time to get our folks together. We did a lot of planning at the end of the school year, but I hope that we can understand and be empathetic that this is not just recreating March to May. This is creating 3 new ways that we're going to educate students. And if you think to the minutia of the organizational changes that we need to make, the skills that we need to develop, the capacity that needs to be expanded, the professional growth that needs to occur, it is a huge undertaking. So the idea that we can have those 4 days with all of our staff working, all of the adults would be working, and allow us for training, professional development, finalization of rules and procedures, making sure that everything is up and running and smooth so that we've got a great transition when kids start. The other thing that we're also working on is providing training for our parents. We understand that, Google Classroom, Pear Deck, Flipgrid, all of these tech applications, they're new to you too, and you may need some additional support. So we're working on a training platform for our parents as well, and we would use that time there. The other thing that we're working on is, we've got some business people on our groups, and one of the comments that this was actually from one of our employees that also worked in a private business prior to coming to us is, his comment was, it resounded with me of, I've never been a part of a major rollout of a new initiative or new program where you started everything and everybody all at once on the first day. You gradually and have a slow start, you have a gradual start. So what that means is whether we would start the week of August 17th or the week of August 24th at each level of saying, we've got so many new procedures and restrictions that are likely to be in place that let's start at the elementary level with kindergarten and first grade and just bring them in one day and get them accustomed to the new rules. And then we'll add to that and bring second and third grade. And at the middle school, maybe we just start with sixth grade, and the high school, maybe just with the freshmen. So it also gives us time for that gradual start. And we want this to be successful. We understand that, especially for our young students and our secondary students, school is not going to look the same when they come back as it was when they left. Classrooms are not going to look like they looked. There's not going to be reading nooks in the classroom or small group learning centers or as many displays on the wall or flexible seating that's in the classroom, because we cannot disinfect the number of surfaces that takes in a timely fashion. So we want to be prepared. We want to transition our students, and we can do that by all being patient and understanding and empathetic that we need time to do that well. And I know we all want, I'm a parent of middle school kids. I want my kids back to school as soon as possible, just like you do. But we also wanted to do it in a way that our kids feel successful, they feel comfortable, and you do as well, that you're entrusting us with the safety and health of your kids, and that we're prepared to do that. So that concludes kind of the update on the academic calendar, which takes us to our online learning options. So if you're looking for this in our wheel, our graphic, it's not there because this is a completely separate program from anything that would be happening in those three plans of in-person, in-building, blended, or remote. So our Strongsville online learning option is not remote learning 2.0. It's K to 12, so any student that will be entering kindergarten all the way up to seniors, it's an online learning program where kids would not attend in-person school at any time. So this is completely online. This is a completely different program, but it is run through our school district. So if you decide, we sent out a survey on Monday, if you decide to look at this option and you ultimately sign up for this option, your child would still remain a Strongsville City School student. It's run through our district. We contract these services out, but there's not an opportunity to interact with our teachers or participate in remote learning. This is completely online. The platform would provide a teacher. I think there's a question later, I'll answer it now. Is it going to be a Strongsville City Schools teacher, or is it going to be a teacher that is contracted through another company? We're still finalizing that decision as to which it will be, whether we're going to hire and have teachers that are going to teach only in this online program or whether we're going to contract that out. But the teachers, as it says on the slide, they're going to grade the work, they're going to provide feedback, they're going to communicate with families, be available for help. So there would be a teacher component of this. Now, the next bullet I think is very important, because one of the pieces of feedback we got a lot from families is that they wanted live instruction when we're in a remote setting. And when we finalize our remote learning plans, we'll be able to clearly share how much of that will be provided in a live instruction format. But when you take a look at these programs and you take a look at true online learning at the K to 12 level, it is not live instruction. They're not going to log on and go see somebody like me talking and providing them with live instruction and a math lesson for the day. So there's videos, there's online resources. It's that asynchronous learning. There will be a teacher, there'll be videos you can play and see. But if you take a look at true online learning modules or modes, they're pretty much asynchronous learning. There'll be a live teacher there to help support grade work, feedback, communicate, as we talked about, but not providing live instruction. The other part that is important to note as you consider this and possibly make decisions is that we do have an enrollment requirement. The coursework in the online learning option is built on a semester at a time. So we cannot have students entering the Strongsville online learning option, getting halfway through the semester of curriculum, and then saying, hey, this is not for me. I want to go back to the Strongsville City Schools in-person and building or blended model, because the curriculum, although it's close, it's not completely aligned. So when you make this decision, you are deciding for a semester. So if you say, I want my child or my children to participate in this, you're making an August to December decision. Then after that, you will decide again, do I want to continue this for January to May? So that's an important consideration as you determine what's next for your decisions in terms of a completely online option. So again, one of these side notes, what's the rationale? Why are we developing this online learning option? It's important to note that we already have this. We've had this for, I think, 5, 6 years, something like that. K to 12, we've already had this option for our students. We have a number of students in it, but obviously it's a more popular option or consideration now with what's going on in the world and COVID. So the other reason why we like this is we can control the education and have oversight of the education our students are getting. They'll remain Strongsville City School students. That allows for flexibility. So, on that semester, if it's in the best interest of your family and health needs or circumstances to be online, you've got that option. If things change the next semester, we seamlessly welcome you back. And it makes an easy transition back to the classroom. And then the other thing, as I talked about, it's an educational benefit because we oversee the curriculum and the quality, and we have regular contact with the teachers. In the past, we've contracted those services out, but we have contact with them. And then also, it's a financial benefit. So it's an educational benefit to our kids. It's a financial benefit to our taxpayers. And what I mean by that is that the cost that we pay for students to participate in this program is about 20% of what it would cost if students withdrew from our district and went to a public online school district. They would take significant taxpayer funds with them. So that's a financial benefit that it does cost us a little bit money, but we save about $4,000 ish per student that stays with us instead of leaving to go to a public online charter. So we sent an interest survey to you on Monday. We had about 200 or so people fill it out. We'd like to see more fill it out if you're interested. And it truly is assessing your interest. So don't get nervous. This is not a decision. We will make it clear probably mid-July, early July. We'll send out some information. We want to give you guys a big picture of where we're going so you can decide whether it works for you or your family. But by mid-July, that's when you're going to have to decide if you're going to take us up on this offer for the upcoming school year. So that's the update on the online learning option. So what I want to talk about just briefly is in-person, in-building learning. So, we define blended learning as, X number of days at home for remote, X number of days in school for in-person. In-building, in-person learning is when we're able to get all students, that means all 5,400 plus students in school every day, or maybe it means that it's students in a specific grade level are able to come back, or maybe it means all students in an identified group can receive in-person learning at school 5 days a week. So just to bring this back and solidify, because I know we started talking about blended learning, this is our goal. This is what we want. We want to be able to say that we're going to open up our schools 5 days a week for all kids every day as it's permissible and compliant with health and safety requirements and restrictions. Right now, we can't do that because of the 6 feet social distancing. If that is moved or we have local control, that's a discussion that we'll have as a district, is do we want to move that to 4 or 5 feet, which would allow all kids to come back. So I just want everybody to keep in mind, although we've talked a lot today about blended learning and remote learning, in-person, in-building learning is the goal. But remember, as I said at the beginning, it is the goal, but it will have restrictions. It will have restrictions with how where will kids eat their lunch? Will it be in the cafeteria? Will it be in their classroom? Will there be markings on the floor restricting movement into buildings as to how students will move around the buildings? At the elementary level, will encore classes, will they be in the encore classroom or will they be in the classroom? Are we going to have recess? How are we going to switch classes at the high school? Are we going to have staggered bell schedules? Will kids be allowed to go to the lockers? You start to see the never-ending list of decisions that we have to make to prepare for this, and understand that even if we're allowed to have all kids, certain grade levels, or certain groups of students, that there will be restrictions for in-person, in-building learning. So one of the things that I just wanted to highlight in this is that we are working on a variety of scenarios. Remember, I talked about we worked on some scenario planning for office space and trailers, and decided that Yes, it could be done, but it's not something we're looking to pursue further at this point in time. One of the things that we're also scenario planning for right now is, could we bring our preschool students back in the current structure that we have now? Now, again, it's not on a separate slide, but as a side note, current rules at the preschool have changed the number of students we can have. So it used to be a class limit of 16. Now it's 9. They're following the child care provisions. So we've got some decisions that we're making in terms of, are we going to keep with a ratio of students with disabilities and typical peers, or are we going to only service students with disabilities in our preschool, since we've been reduced from 16 students in a classroom to 9. But we're working on, can we bring back all preschool students within the restrictions we have, for the 4 days a week that they were going previously in a similar schedule. The other thing that we're looking at is, we've taken a look at prioritizing our youngest learners. We have kindergartners, first graders, second graders that are learning to read. They're learning to develop meaningful relationships with kids. They're learning number sense. They're learning how to write. That becomes very difficult to build those meaningful relationships, to teach these essential building block foundational skills that they're going to use for the rest of their life and are going to build upon their education moving forward in a blended learning structure. So what we've looked at is, in our buildings, starting with kindergarten, how many grade levels can we fit based on the available space and the class size requirements with 6 feet social distancing. And so that's some of the scenario planning we're doing at the elementary school. And then also select groups of students. I've talked a lot with our parents that have children with disabilities, or our English learners, or whatever different group of students that may have learning needs that would require more than 2 days a week. I know that all of our kids would benefit from more than 2 days a week of in-person, or 3 days a week of in-person instruction. But these are some of the scenarios that we're working through. And Andy Trujillo, our Director of Student Services, is starting a work group specifically focused on special education students with special needs, and our students with disabilities, to look at what are some options that we have. And so these scenarios are all based on, even if we're in a blended learning structure, are there certain groups or grade levels that we would still have come in 5 days a week as we move forward with this? And I do want to make one side note, because this is a topic of conversation in other districts, and I just want to make a clear statement. We are not looking at having in-person learning for just elementary school and making middle school and high school students stay at home and be remote full-time. That's not a decision that I would support. That's not a decision that I'm recommending. I do not believe that it's equitable to our students to say that we're not going to have certain age levels or grade levels attend school. So I know some other school districts are looking at that, and that may meet the needs of their kids and their community. But in terms of what we're looking at, we are going to keep the middle school open for middle school students. We're going to keep the high school open for high school students. And we're going to use all available space for our elementary students. But we are going to keep a blended learning structure pre-K to 12 if we have to, for students, and not put some students on complete remote learning for 5 days a week. So that takes it through the updates, the decisions, the things that I wanted to share with you today. But we did send you out a survey, and I wanted to share some of the feedback that you gave through the survey, and answer some questions that maybe came through that I didn't address in the topic. So one of the things we asked you is, we gave you a whole list of things, as you can see on your screen here, and said, check all that apply. Check all that apply, that as we plan for next school year, what are important to you and your family and your kids. So this goes back to what we talked about, relationships, right? That is so important for our kids. We talk about internally, we're a relationships organization first and an educational organization second. What we do as educators all starts with meaningful relationships with our students and between our students and staff. And so I just, the resounding, popularity of that answer is what we believe as well. And that's why it's important. You can't build those relationships as easily or as quickly in a blended setting or a remote setting. And so that's why we're looking at how can we use every available opportunity to build that relationship with in-person, in-building learning. And you can see it goes down from there of cleaning and sanitizing disinfecting of schools is very important. Live classes for remote learning, social needs, emotional needs, social distancing, etc. So what we asked you after that is we said, all right, if we take this whole list and we want you to prioritize, only pick one, pick your top most important consideration, your second most important, and your third. And so what we did is we said, let's look at those lists and pick the top five. So we picked the top five from all lists. And as you can see there, if I quickly count, I think that came up with eight different experiences. And then as you look across, you can see which of these were popular on all the lists. So live classes for remote learning, not only did 24% of you say that was the most important thing for your consideration as we look into the next school year, but it was also popular for people that chose it second and people that chose it third. Same for cleaning and disinfecting and sanitizing our schools. So what this helps us to do is this helps us to prioritize communication, information, procedures, and protocols to address what's important to our kids and our community and our parents. So thank you for sharing that. And, I hope you gain some insight as to where some of your fellow parents view as areas of importance as well. So looking at some of the themes and questions, so blended learning, we had a series of questions that came up. The first one was structure of remote learning. Is it going to be live? Is it just going to be additional homework to complete? What will accountability look like? How will they balance? So I don't have much to share. In a future community conversation, we'll talk more in depth about remote learning. But what I can say is there will be live lessons. We also need to consider, though, that live lessons will be recorded so they can be accessed at any time. But we also have to be understanding that if we have to live in a blended learning structure and a teacher is teaching all day, that we're trying to work on options where students can be a part of the live instruction versus just a teacher being online talking with students at home, because they're teaching live all day. We can't, as much as we would love to, we can't duplicate all of our teachers to be doing live instruction for students at home and live instruction for students in the building. So we're problem solving that. We've got some options about how we can bridge both of those worlds simultaneously. And then we're working like that, or we're working through that. The other question of just additional homework to complete, no. It's not good just to be, okay, I taught you the lesson, complete this homework. There are structures, there are models of blended learning and remote learning that we're working through. So it's not just going to be one day, here's your lesson, the next day's work on your own. There will be components, obviously kids will be working remotely, but it will be more than just a homework that they'll do the next day. The format of remote learning, different teachers using different media. One of the things that's been recommended by all of our work groups is that we use one platform, and that one platform that's been recommended is Google Classroom. So that means that there will not be, let me say it this way, because there's always going to be multiple technologies that are used. But Google Classroom will be the main hub that folks will go to be the starting point for all of the educational and remote learning components that are there. So for those of you that don't know Google Classroom, it is almost it's almost a learning management system. It's got a lot of great features to it, but it's going to be able to assign work, submit work, chats there, dialogue, communication. So it really is your one-stop shop. But I don't want to give the perception that you're never going to branch off from anything but Google Classroom. Google Classroom is the landing page that everything else will build from, because there's great tech tools that are out there that help us to replicate in-person instruction in a remote setting, and also help us to do this blended learning structure of live in classroom and live at home that we're trying to work on. What are the expectations for both teachers and students in terms of consistent teacher feedback? Again, nothing specific to share in terms of what are the expectations, other than there's a global expectation that has come from the high school committees that there will be consistent expectations from all teachers that are teaching the same subject. So as an example, English 9 is that whatever English 9 teacher your kids have, that there will be consistent expectations for what's going to happen in a blended learning structure or a remote learning structure, and then solidifying that feedback piece of it. So we're working through those expectations, but that clearly is a point of focus for our staff to build that consistency this upcoming school year. The next question was about collaboration with neighboring districts. Is there a network to share best practices and plans? So there's a variety of networks. There's state networks. I'm on a weekly call with other superintendents every Tuesday discussing different topics. But what we've started here is every other Thursday. Our next meeting's tomorrow. Me and the superintendents from Brunswick, Berea, Brecksville, and North Royalton meet. We discuss where we're at with our plans. Everybody's working on a similar variation of in-building, blended, and remote. And so, yes, we have created our own network of our surrounding school districts to discuss, and we meet on an every other Thursday basis. Not so we're identical, but so we can, learn from one another, understand maybe why some other districts have the opportunity to do some things different, to see if they can be replicated here. But it's been a great network to not just look at the management of this, but to look at best practices, because nobody's got this all figured out and we all need to learn together. Continuing on blended learning questions, student services accommodations, it says, how is a student on an IEP going to be measured, monitored, and given the right resources that are dictated within the IEP? Would one-on-one tutoring be available? So I don't have an answer at this time for this question, other than to state that we are creating a work group and with parents and staff and administration to talk about and to problem solve questions such as this. So since that work is going to start in early July and start working through some of these questions, I don't want to give any answers as to where we may be going, because I want to leave it open for that group to decide. But these are all questions that will be worked on and be part of the focus of this work group that's gathering membership right now that we've got some other pieces in place, and we'll start problem solving. Flexibility of the plan. Is the plan going to be reevaluated every semester, or is this going to be only planned for the whole academic year? So it's even beyond the semester. We may need to ebb and flow, at a day's notice, a week's notice. And so, no, nothing is solidified that this is going to be the plan for the semester or this is going to be the plan for the year. What we all need to keep in mind, the goal is in-person and in-building learning every day for every kid. So if we keep that as the focus of where we're going, the only way we will move from that is if that restrictions from the state guidance or local board of health dictate that we do that or recommend, and those recommendations are based on sound factual information, then we'll make that move. So as an example, if the restrictions start out the school year as 6 feet and we have to live in blended learning, and then in middle of September they come back and say, hey, you know what, we can move it down to 5 feet. We will move right away as fast as we can, whether it's the next day or the next couple of days, to in-person and in-building learning for everybody. We need flexibility, and that's what these plans are allowing us to do. It's not waiting and saying, oh my gosh, now we got to do this. How are we going to plan for it? It's saying, oh, we've got that plan. Let's take it off the shelf. Let's implement that plan. Our staff knows that plan. And we're going to start with this plan, 2 days from now. So nothing is solidified long-term. We're going to have to pivot. And based on how big the pivot is, we're going to have to look at how much time that is and how much notice we have to give the families, et cetera, if we have that flexibility. Impact on encore and specials, art, music, PE, extracurricular activities. That is something that is currently being discussed in the work groups, but they have not been finalized. The only part that I can tell you right now is we will have encore classes. At the elementary level, we will have art, music, and physical education. At the secondary level, we are still planning on, at this point in time, the recommendations from the committees are still having kids go through their normal schedule. I've had multiple meetings with Mr. Andy Heyer, who's our head of our Department of Arts and Music, about plans for how we can manage this with large performance groups. And I feel very comfortable with his leadership of that department and the plans that we have. It may look different It may not be able to be what it was, but I have no plans as superintendent to recommend that we not still provide encore classes, special area classes for our students at all levels. In terms of extracurricular activities, obviously sports are already up and running with the restrictions that they have. We're planning on moving forward with sports. We have a team that's focused on, how are we going to work with spectators? How are we going to work with games if we're able to have games? So that work is being done. and clubs and after school activities, that's a little lower on the priority list right now in terms of decision making. So it is on the radar. That's a part of a group. It's a part of their decision making process, but that's not something that is at the top of the list to decide right now. So more to come there. So the district calendar, some questions on the district calendar. State requirements. Is the state changing their requirements for student time in school for the upcoming school year? And if mandated testing is eliminated or greatly reduced, would the school calendar change? So the quick answer is no and no. No, the state is not changing the requirements for student time in school. However, based on the changes that we are recommending, we have plenty of time built in. Students will, the only grade levels where we have areas that we're very close in terms of minimum school hours is preschool, the half-day preschool program, and half-day kindergarten. But even with the adjustments to the calendar that we've proposed, we will be able to manage that. And even if we have calamity days in the future, we have the structure for remote learning. We'll be able to make up those hours as well. In terms of mandated testing, the state's still deciding what state testing is going to look like, but whatever happens with that, the school calendar will not be impacted. When will a decision be made? I'm hopeful by mid-July that we'll have a final decision and have something to the board in terms of the calendar, but it won't be any earlier than July 13th. That's their next board meeting. It could be as late as the first meeting in August, but hopefully we've given enough information to our families that you can plan accordingly, that it's either going to be sometime the week of August 18th, but no later than the week of August 24th. And then finally on this slide, student orientation. Will there be opportunities for those students transitioning to a new school or grade level? We are working on virtual tours of the school building. Whether we're going to do anything in person is still to be determined. This would be for transition to the middle school, transition to the high school specific. If that's what we mean by grade level, then yes. If it means, transition to, I'm going from third grade to fourth grade, we are working on, the buildings are working on virtual options for, kindergarten orientation, open house, parent-teacher conferences, if we need to do that virtually, et cetera. So there may be some opportunities, but the focus has been students going from elementary to middle and middle school to high school. So some questions about Strongsville online learning option. So this one is, if I have more than one child, do they both have to select the online option? And the answer is no. You can make the decision based on all of your children individually. So if you have 3 kids in your family, one can do the online learning option and one could come to school and either in person in building or blended or remote, whatever phase of the plan we're in. So no, it's not a family decision, it's an individual student decision. Duration of the decision, are we able to change our mind and either add or drop the online learning option? If we choose an online only option for the fall, can we switch back in the spring, for example, if a vaccine were to become available? I've answered this question earlier, but let me reiterate it again. Once you say, I'm going to the online learning option, you've committed for 1 semester at a time. So you would commit for August to December. If there's a vaccine available and you say, hey, I feel comfortable going back to in-person and building education in January, absolutely, you can make that decision and do it. All you're deciding is 1 semester at a time. So you'll decide in July, what do I want to do for August through December? Probably in October or November, we'll say, what do you want to do for January to May to get us through the next semester? But once you're in, you are in. And so that's something that's important to note because of the curriculum, as we talked about. The one decision that we're still talking about is, what if I'm in the online learning option, but I want to, I'm sorry, what if I'm in the in-person, in-building option and it's September and I decide I don't like it? Can I transfer in to the Strongsville online learning option at a later date? We're still discussing that, finalizing that. That one has more possibility. So more to come on that, but you can't go from online to in-person. We're still deciding whether you can go from in-person to online once the semester starts. And then some additional questions on the structure and course offering. So the first one, what is the name of the curriculum used? Is it Edmentum? So, there's companies that provide this curriculum. So we actually have, there's three different products that we use at different levels. So K-5 is called Lincoln Learning. That's the curriculum that we use. It's Lincoln Learning curriculum. For students that are in 6 to 8, it's called Edgenuity. And for students in high school, it's called Courseware or Ed Options. So those are the three different platforms that we use, and the names of the curriculum based on the level. Are honors or AP classes available with this option? Yes, but only at Strongsville High School. So if you are a 6 to 8 student, there would not be honors curriculum available. It would just be, general education, math curriculum. There's courses. So, if it's course-based, but you're not going to take honors English 7, you're going to take English 7. But if you're at the high school level, with the Ed Options program that we have, there's more options available, and AP classes and honors classes are available. I can't state, that it replicates exactly every single course that we offer in our district, that'll be there, but there are honors and AP classes offered. Next, is this online learning plan the equivalent of the blended learning program material and requirements, or completely separate plan material? So as we've talked about throughout, it's completely separate. So this is not based off of our blended learning plan or online or remote learning plan. It's completely separate, completely its own curriculum. And again, that's why we need people to commit for a semester. So it's separate. Number 4, how are subjects like orchestra and band handled in the online program? So this is something you have to decide. If you have a child that sings in the choir, plays in the orchestra, plays in the band, or is in any performance-based course that I failed to mention, that they could not recreate this in this online learning option. So if you make this decision, you're also making a decision to say that I'm no longer going to play my instrument or sing for this period of time. You just can't recreate it in a completely online environment. However, based on board policy, students could participate in extracurricular activities outside of the school day. So it doesn't seem to be parity between those decisions. If you don't want your child to come to school for whatever reasons those may be, it may not align to, I'm going to have my child come to school and participate in an extracurricular activity with students. But if that's something you're interested in, if there's any music classes that are not, that do not occur during the school day, that are truly solely extracurricular, then yes, you can participate in those. And if there's audition requirements, you'd have to meet those. Although not specifically stated here, if the question comes up, well, can I do part of it online and then come to school just for band or orchestra or choir? The answer is no. This is not just a new decision. This is a decision we've made for all the years the program has been available. If you take the online option, you are completely online except for extracurriculars. You could not pick and choose live in-person classes that you would like, and then the rest be online. This is just completely online. Next, how is district and state testing handled in the online program? So the students do not participate in district testing. So district testing means, whether it would be common assessments or classroom-based assessments, the assessments are all built into this online learning platform. So you would take tests, but they would be based on the curriculum and the assessments built, not by Strongsville City Schools teachers, but built by the companies that produce this curriculum. And then in terms of state testing, you would still be required to take state testing. You would still report, you'd have to report to the school district, to your building at a time and place. And obviously, if one of the reasons is health concerns, we would work that out with you to have an environment that meets your child's needs or your needs. But state testing would still be required, and that is required to happen in a school building. And then finally, are the online teachers from Strongsville City Schools, like the blended learning plan, or are the teachers contracted out? So again, just to reiterate, we haven't made that decision yet. We are waiting to see what is the interest level. And then obviously there's a cost you have to pay if we have live instruction, or not live instruction, I'm sorry. There's a cost you have to pay if we're paying for the teacher. There's a cost you have to pay if we're contracting out. So we need to see what's in the financial and educational interests of the district moving forward. So that is to be determined at a later date. So I think that brings us to our last slide. So we almost made it perfectly at an hour here. But just as a reminder, our next community conversation is Tuesday, July 7th at 4 p.m. And then we are going to be on the cadence of every other Tuesday through August 18th. So July 21st, August 4th, August 18th. The streaming network, we've got it fixed now. No worries in the future. We've got backups for our backup plans. And so, all of them will be streamed in this same way, live streamed through SCS TV. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be the same structure. So we'll determine what decisions have been made and what updates we're going to be ready to give by July 7th. I may invite some of my colleagues to join. We may bring back the live questions because we may have some more decisions solidified to share with you. But we will share that as we get closer. So thank you so much for your understanding yesterday. Coming back and joining us today for this community conversation. Hopefully, you've got some information. It's been beneficial to you. Share some feedback. Send me an email if there's any feedback or thoughts that you want to share prior to our next one. But we're going to continue to communicate. I'll have an email out to you guys next week as to any new information that we want to share in between meetings. But again, thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking an active interest in our school district and our kids. And thanks for the thousands of people that are giving their feedback, whether you're on a focus group or whether you're contacting me. It's greatly appreciated. Our plan may take us a little longer to get there, but I think the plan is going to be the best plan possible for our kids, for our school district, and for our families because of the time we're taking and the valuable input we're getting from you. So thanks again for being here, and we'll see you back here in 2 weeks.